Hello. My name is Autumn. At my sister's promotion dinner, right here in my own home, she stood up, raised a glass, and told 30 people that failure runs in my blood. My parents didn't flinch. They laughed. They've been laughing for years, while living under my roof, eating from my fridge, calling my help just what family does. But when they erased me from family photos, when they used my credit to buy a life they said I didn't earn, I realized something. I was never the guest. I was the foundation they stood on. And when I removed myself, they had nowhere else to stand. What would you have done? Charleston evenings have a way of pretending everything's fine. The air smells of jasmine. The breeze is soft enough to make you forget what hurts. My backyard looked like something out of a magazine that night. Fairy lights strung across the oak trees, crystal glasses catching the glow, the sound of a string quartet easing people into comfort. 30 guests, all talking about my sister. Callista stood at the head of the long table, the perfect picture of confidence. Her hair was pinned just right, her smile rehearsed to look effortless. "To new beginnings," she said, her voice smooth as silk. They clapped. My parents, Vera and Thurman, sat close to her, faces lit with pride. From where I sat, at the far end of my own table, it looked like a portrait of success. Only I wasn't in it. When she lifted her glass, I knew something was coming. Callista never missed an opportunity to make herself the center of a scene. "Some people are born to lead," she said, her voice bright with charm. Then came the blade. "Others well. Failure runs in their blood." It was soft enough to sound like humor, sharp enough to draw blood. A few guests chuckled politely, unsure. Someone said, "Oh, come on," to make it sound like a joke. I didn't move. I could hear the air shift. I looked at my mother. Vera gave the kind of smile you give when a child misbehaves in public. You pretend it's cute. My father lowered his eyes, pretending to be too deep in thought to notice. No one said a word. The string quartet played on. Inside, something cold settled. I'd been through enough of her performances to know I was expected to play along. Keep the peace. Don't embarrass the family. I forced a smile, just enough to look polite. Then I took a sip of wine, slow and deliberate. "Nice one," I said, softly enough that only she could hear it. Callista tilted her head, that same smile still plastered across her face. "You always were a good sport," she murmured, and turned to toast again. The sound of applause filled the air. It didn't feel like clapping, it felt like nails in a coffin. I remember thinking, how strange, to be invisible in your own home. I'd paid for this dinner, bought the wine, even arranged the catering when Callista didn't have time. I'd done it because that's what the youngest does. You smooth the edges. You carry the weight quietly, and somehow they still call you selfish. I sat through dessert, nodding when expected. When the laughter rose again, I stared at the lights tangled in the branches overhead. I used to love that sight. Now it looked like a trap. Linda from Callista's office clinked her glass and said, "You've worked so hard for this, Callie. You've always been a fighter." Always been a fighter. I nearly laughed. If hard work were measured in silence, I'd have earned medals. Junie, my niece, sat 2 seats down, clapping along, a tiny mirror of her mother in a white dress. "That's my mommy," she said proudly. Callista beamed, soaking it in. When I stood to refill my wine, no one noticed. I walked past the table, through my kitchen, the sound of laughter trailing behind me like smoke. The house smelled like roast chicken and candle wax. I leaned on the counter, looking out at the crowd through the glass doors. They looked happy, Callista glowing in the center, my parents beside her like loyal guards. I remember asking myself, when did my silence become consent? Maybe it was when I paid her last semester of tuition and didn't tell anyone. Or when I let mom and dad move in for a few months, that turned into 3 years. Maybe it was every time I told myself keeping peace was better than being right. Callista's laugh rang out again, high and bright. I turned back to the sink, took another glass, filled it halfway. I could still hear her saying it. "Failure runs in their blood." The words replayed until they felt like something ancient, something that had been waiting to be said. By the time I returned to the table, they'd moved on to dessert. I took my seat. My mother leaned toward me, her perfume too sweet. "Don't make a scene," she whispered. "It's her night." "I'm not making one," I said. My voice was flat. She smiled like she'd won something. The night dragged on. Compliments, laughter, toasts. The quartet packed up, one string at a time. People hugged Callista and told her she was inspiring. A woman from the firm said, "You're the reason I applied for that promotion." No one thanked the hostess. No one even remembered who she was. When the last car left, Callista hugged me goodbye. "You don't mind if I leave a few boxes in the garage, right? Just until the weekend." "Sure," I said, because that's what I always said. The door closed behind her. The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was a wound. I sat at the dining table, half-finished glasses everywhere, candles burned down to stubs. I picked up my phone. I had a folder in my files labeled "Proof," in case I ever need to remind them. Inside it were screenshots, bank transfers, old texts, things I'd kept without knowing why. Tonight I knew why. I opened the folder, stared at the list of files. My hand didn't shake. My face didn't move. I whispered to the empty room, "Tonight I won't scream. I'll do something louder." Out back, the fairy lights flickered once, like they were listening. When the applause stopped, so did the illusion that we were a family. When the applause faded, the sound of plates being cleared filled the air. The last of the guests drifted inside, their laughter echoing through the house like ghosts of something I'd already buried. I stayed seated until the clatter died down, until the music stopped pretending this was a celebration. Only then did I move. The kitchen light was still on. A half-full wine glass sat on the counter where I'd left it, its surface smudged with lipstick that wasn't mine. I stood there for a while, just staring at that mark. One more thing someone else had left behind in my home. I was rinsing the glass when I heard small footsteps behind me. "Auntie Autumn?" Junie's voice was soft, hesitant, the way children sound when they've wandered into a grown-up secret. I turned. She was still wearing her little white dress, the one that matched her mother's. "Yes, sweetheart." She tilted her head. "Were you one of the waitresses tonight?" I smiled before the question could sting. "No, honey. I live here." Junie blinked, like she was trying to piece together a puzzle no one had explained to her. "Oh. Mama said it's Grandma's house now." Her words landed quieter than the glass setting down on the counter. I nodded slowly. "Did she?" Junie nodded too, satisfied she'd passed along the message, then skipped off toward the living room, her shoes clicking on the wood floors that still creaked from when I installed them myself. From the other room, I could hear the hum of voices. Callista's laugh carried over the chatter, that same laugh she used at work parties and charity events, just loud enough to demand attention. I wiped the counter, pretending not to listen, but I caught every word. "My life from diapers to director," she announced. The projector flickered on, lighting up the wall. I leaned against the doorway, unseen, and watched the show unfold. There she was, age 6, wearing the costume I'd stitched for her school play. 12, at her birthday party, the one I'd saved 3 paychecks to throw. 22, smiling at her college graduation. Each image flicked by like a slideshow of my labor. But I wasn't in a single frame. Not one. Vera's voice narrated over the images, sweet and proud. "She's always been destined for greatness." I whispered under my breath. Apparently, I've always been destined for the shadows. They clapped when the slideshow ended. I stepped back, out of the glow of the screen, before anyone could turn and notice me. Upstairs, laughter returned, and I felt the walls press in a little tighter. I walked down the hall toward my office, the one room they rarely entered. I switched on the desk lamp and sat down. The air smelled faintly of old paper and printer ink, the scent of things that matter but go unseen. The drawer beside me slid open easily. Inside, bills, receipts, ledgers. I've always been the one who kept track of everything, the accountant of other people's comfort. I pulled out a folder labeled House Documents. My name on the deed, the mortgage, every line of payment in black and white. They knew this, yet somehow the story had become Grandma's house. I laughed softly, not because it was funny, because it was absurd. My eyes fell on another folder, Callista's tuition receipts. I flipped one open, tracing the date with my finger. Paid in full, it said. I remembered that day, her call from Michigan, crying after losing her part-time job. Please, Autumn, she'd said, voice trembling. I'll pay you back when I get the promotion. She never did. A knock at the doorframe pulled me from the memory. Junie again, holding a piece of paper covered in crayon. Look, Andy. I drew our family. I smiled, taking the drawing carefully. Can I see? She pointed as she named them. That's Grandma, Grandpa, Mommy, and me. I studied it. 4 figures. The house in the background. Trees. The family dog. But no me. Where am I? I asked gently. Junie blinked, puzzled. I don't know. Maybe behind the tree. She smiled proudly, waiting for me to approve her masterpiece. I nodded, brushing her hair from her face. It's beautiful, I said. Really? When she left, I added the drawing to my desk pile. It sat on top of the tuition receipts and the house deed, like the perfect summary of my life. Invisible labor, unacknowledged existence. I turned on my laptop. The screen lit the room in blue light. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. What would happen if I just stopped paying for everything? Would they even notice? Would the lights go out before anyone remembered who turned them on? I began to type, not to them, but to myself. A note, a confession, a record. If I disappeared tomorrow, I wrote, they'd still ask what's for dinner. The words didn't make me sad. They made me aware. I minimized the note, opened my photo folders, and scrolled through hundreds of pictures. Most of them were taken by me. Vacations, holidays, birthdays. Yet, I was the one holding the camera, the one who didn't exist in the frame. I clicked delete. Then I made a new folder, Truth. Inside it, a subfolder, Proof they forgot me first. I dragged Junie's drawing into it, scanned the receipts, the deed, the tuition statements. Each click sounded like a heartbeat. When the uploads were done, I sat back. The house was quiet now. Even the night insects outside had gone still. I whispered to myself, you don't become invisible overnight. You're erased one favor at a time, one photo at a time, one memory at a time. My phone buzzed. A new message from Callista. Thanks for hosting tonight. You really outdid yourself. I stared at it for a full minute before typing back, you're welcome. Then I deleted the thread entirely. The next morning came gray and slow, the kind of light that doesn't warm a room. I didn't wake because of noise. I woke because my mind refused to rest. The silence of the house was thick. It was that peculiar quiet after a storm, the sort that pretends to be peace but isn't. I sat on the edge of my bed, watching dust drift through a sunbeam that slipped through the blinds. Every creak of the floorboards seemed louder now that I had no illusion left to cushion it. My bare feet found the cool wood, and before I knew it, I was walking toward my office. The door creaked as I opened it. The faint smell of paper and cedar greeted me like an old friend. On my desk sat the laptop I'd left open last night, the folder Truth still on the screen. But today, I wasn't interested in the digital world. My eyes moved to the small wooden drawer labeled in faded ink, Emergency Only. It had been years since I'd opened it. My hands hesitated on the handle. Then I pulled. Inside was the archaeology of my life. Old journals, torn envelopes, receipts from jobs I'd long forgotten. Letters I never sent. Words I'd written to people who would never read them. At the bottom, beneath yellowed papers, something sparkled faintly. A handmade birthday card, glitter still clinging to its edges. I lifted it carefully, afraid it might crumble. I'd made it for Callista when I was 25. I could still remember cutting the stars out of gold paper, gluing them one by one until the shape of a night sky appeared. On the front it said, "You'll always be the brightest star in my sky." Inside, My handwriting curved neatly, too hopeful for its own good. Below the message, a second line caught my eye, written in a different pen, years later. My own handwriting, sharper now. But stars burn out when you stare at them too long. I laughed softly. It wasn't bitterness, exactly. It was something closer to recognition. Holding that card, a memory unfolded like a reel of film. Callista's college graduation, the day I'd planned down to the flower arrangements. She'd been nervous, convinced no one would show up. And when a few people canceled, she cried in the car. "No one cares," she said, mascara running. "You'll always have me," I'd promised, handing her tissues. I hadn't realized then that I'd built a pattern that would outlive that moment. I was always the safety net, always the extra set of hands, the quiet applause. The hum of the refrigerator pulled me back to the present. The air felt heavier. I set the card on the desk, next to the pile of receipts and proof I'd been collecting. That's when Junie appeared again, barefoot, holding a piece of paper smudged with crayon. "Auntie Autumn," she said, grinning, "I made a new drawing." I smiled, taking it from her. "Let's see what you made." It was bright and chaotic, just like a child's imagination. Blue sky, big yellow sun, a red-roofed house, and 4 stick figures holding hands. Grandma, Grandpa, Mommy, and Junie. "No, Auntie Autumn." "Where am I, sweetheart?" I asked, keeping my tone light. Junie studied the paper for a moment, serious in the way children get when they think they've missed something important. Then she tapped the corner of the page where a tree stood. "Maybe you're behind the tree," she said, proud of her solution. I nodded, smiling for her sake. "Maybe I am." She hugged me and ran off again, the sound of her laughter trailing down the hall. When she was gone, I looked at the drawing again. The house I bought, the family I supported, the tree that was apparently me, rooted but unseen. Still, it was a beautiful picture. I laid it gently beside the birthday card. The morning stretched into noon. Sunlight slid across the desk as I began organizing the documents. Old bills, tuition transfers, mortgage statements. I scanned each one, saving them into the truth folder. My movements were slow, deliberate. This wasn't anger, it was accounting. As the printer hummed, I thought about how invisible people often know the details others forget. We keep track because no one else does. Somewhere upstairs, Callista's voice echoed faintly through the ceiling, laughing into her phone, probably telling someone how exhausting it was being successful. I shook my head. She had no idea how much work it took to maintain her image, how many times I'd stepped in to patch the holes she left behind. After scanning the last file, I leaned back. My eyes landed on the laptop screen. The folder blinked at me like a heartbeat. I opened a new document. At the top, I typed, "Eviction Notice Draft 1, Personal Use Only." My pulse steadied. The words looked strange, but right. I stared at them for a long time, feeling the weight of what they meant. Would I really go that far? Could I? Then I thought of Junie's drawing, the missing figure behind the tree, and the answer came easily. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just started typing. To all current residents, this notice serves as a 30-day request to vacate the property at 212 Sycamore Lane. The language was simple, factual. I'd written 1,000 memos for other people's problems. Writing one for myself felt like finally exhaling. When I finished the first paragraph, I paused. The cursor blinked at me, a single pulse on a white screen. I hovered my finger over save but didn't press it. Not yet. Instead, I whispered to the quiet room, "This isn't revenge. It's recognition." The words settled into the air. For the first time, it didn't feel like I was losing something. It felt like I was reclaiming it. I closed the laptop halfway, leaving the screen still glowing faintly in the dim light. I didn't hit save. But I didn't close the document either. It was Thursday late afternoon. The light outside had softened, stretching long shadows across the kitchen floor as I wrapped up emails on my laptop. I hadn't moved the eviction notice from my screen. It sat there like a dare, half-written and blinking, waiting for me to make it real. I was in the middle of drafting a message to a client when the front door opened. Not knocked, opened. Callista's voice followed the sound, sharp and casual, as if this were her weekly drop-in at a place she owned. Did you move the wine? She called, her heels tapping confidently against the hardwood. She didn't look toward me, just made her way to the fridge, rummaging through shelves that weren't hers to touch. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The gall of her entering without even a pause was enough. She turned around, bottle in hand. You could at least say hi. My eyes drifted back to the laptop. I clicked on the eviction draft, scrolling down slowly, deliberately. You didn't knock. Oh, come on, she huffed. I've walked through that door 100 times. Since when do I need permission? I didn't look at her. Since I started locking rooms. She chuckled like I was being cute. You're really on a roll with this whole boundaries thing, huh? I closed the laptop, stood, and walked out of the room. No words, no eye contact. I let my silence be the distance she kept ignoring. As I passed through the hallway, something caught my eye. The family photo wall. I stopped. Third frame from the top, our childhood portrait. The original used to show all three sisters, me in the middle, smiling too wide in my crooked bangs, Callista and our eldest sister Marin on either side. But now, only two girls remained. My side had been cropped clean. My voice was flat. Where's the original? Vera's voice drifted from behind me. She was carrying folded laundry, acting as if she hadn't just passed me. It looked cleaner this way, she said casually. Less cluttered. I turned toward her, slowly. I hope your memories are as tidy as your lies. She flinched barely, but I caught it, the moment her control slipped. She didn't reply. I walked away before she could. In my bedroom, I shut the door and locked it. I stood in front of the mirror, gripping the edge of a sink. My reflection stared back at me, tired, yes, but not broken. I whispered to the glass. This is my home. I deserve respect. I deserve to be seen. Then again, stronger. Get out. And finally, 30 days. That's all you get. Each sentence felt sharper than the last. I scribbled them on a post-it note and pressed it to the corner of the mirror. A small reminder of what was coming. I spent the next few hours laying quiet groundwork. Changed the passwords to my bank accounts. Locked the office door. Installed a new digital lock on the wine fridge. I even ordered a Ring camera just in case. Not for drama. For proof. For the first time, I wasn't reacting. I was preparing. Nobody noticed. Nobody asked. That night, we sat at the dining table together for dinner. Vera had made her usual Wednesday chicken, a day late, because Callista had a work happy hour. No one commented on the shift. Callista, swirling her glass of wine, the one I'd paid for, looked up. Don't forget, Junie's birthday brunch is here next month. We'll need the patio cleared out by 10. I set my fork down gently, the clink loud in the silence that followed. If you walk into my home one more time without knocking, I said, evenly, I will change the locks. And if anyone calls me a failure again, I looked directly at her. They'll say it from the sidewalk. The room froze. Vera looked up from her plate. Callista blinked once, then smirked. Relax, drama queen. I stood, walked to the hallway, pointed to the photo she'd butchered. You erased me there, I said. Try it again, and I'll erase you legally. Then I turned around and went to my room. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. But I locked it. And this time, I slept well. The next morning arrived calm, the kind of stillness that hides tension underneath. I made coffee, the sound of the machine humming through the quiet kitchen. For a few hours, I thought maybe I'd find a rhythm again. But peace doesn't last long when people believe your boundaries are optional. By noon, I noticed it, the wine fridge door, slightly open. A half-empty bottle of my reserve red sat on the counter, condensation beating down its side. Next to it was a note, written in Callista's looping handwriting. Needed it for a virtual toast. Thanks in advance. No apology, no courtesy. Just assumption. I took a photo of the bottle, then the note. Emailed it to myself. Subject line. Evidence. continued entitlement. That was how I started my morning. Calm, calculated, careful. I'd learned that quiet documentation was louder than shouting. By afternoon, the smell of grilled food drifted through the backyard. Callista was hosting another one of her little work socials. Except it wasn't hers to host. The guests were her colleagues, men in pressed shirts, women with too much perfume. They were laughing, making small talk, holding glasses filled with my wine. I stayed polite, moving in and out of the kitchen, keeping to the edges like a shadow in my own house. At one point, I heard her say it. I paid my own way through grad school, Callista told her group, laughing like it was a punchline. No help from anyone. Guess hard work runs in the family, huh? There it was again, rewriting history right in front of me. A woman beside her gasped admiringly. That's incredible, Callie. I wish my parents raised me that independent. I could have walked away. I should have. But something inside me shifted, like a lever being pulled. I went inside, poured water into a glass, and opened my laptop. Within seconds, the proof was in front of me. Tuition transfer, University of Michigan, 2012, from Autumn last name. I stared at the PDF, the bank seal, the date, my signature. I didn't print it. I didn't send it. Instead, I whispered to myself, they want memory games. I play with receipts. Outside, applause erupted for something Callista said. I closed the laptop and smiled, not the kind of smile people see, but the kind that means you've decided something. Later that evening, after the guests left, the house smelled of charcoal and perfume. I was loading dishes when my phone rang. The screen flashed Mom. I almost didn't answer. Almost. Hi, Mom, I said, voice steady. Autumn, she began, in that tone that meant I was about to be corrected. You've been so cold lately. This isn't like you. I dried my hands, set the towel down. Like me? You know what I mean, she said quickly. Don't make your sister look bad. She's under so much pressure at work. You know how people talk. I laughed softly. I think she's doing just fine talking for herself. Vera sighed, the martyr's sigh she'd perfected over decades. You're being cruel. It reflects on us all. No, Mom, I said, my voice low but sharp. She made me disappear. I'm just done hiding it. There was silence, and then, carefully, she said, You sound dramatic. Are you okay? Maybe you need rest. That word, dramatic, was the match. They always used it when the truth became inconvenient. I closed my eyes, breathed once, and said, Save the concern. You picked your favorite. I'm picking myself. The silence that followed was clean, pure. I ended the call before she could fill it. The kitchen clock ticked steadily. Somewhere in the distance, a car door slammed, maybe Callista heading out for the night. I didn't look out the window. I didn't need to see her. I went to my office, opened the drawer labeled emergency only. Inside were the documents I'd already scanned, the mortgage, the deed, the insurance statements. Every proof of ownership they ignored. I stacked them neatly, then opened my laptop. The glow of the screen filled the room. I searched for a standard legal form, 30-day notice to vacate, residential property. Downloaded it. Saved it under a new folder, House, Legal. At the top I typed, for consideration. I filled out the lines carefully, the sound of my typing rhythmic and steady. Property address, 212, Sycamore Lane. Residence, Vera and Thurman last name, Callista last name. When I was done, I sat back. The form stared back at me, black and white and perfectly real. I closed the laptop slowly, as if sealing something sacred. The air in the room felt heavier. Maybe I don't need them gone forever, I thought. Maybe I just need them gone long enough to hear themselves think. I poured myself a glass of water and stood by the window. Outside, the garden lights shimmered faintly. The same lights I'd once strung for birthdays, anniversaries, holidays that only ever celebrated someone else. It was strange, peaceful, even, to realize I didn't feel guilt. I felt order returning. My phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Callista. Need you to Venmo Mom for the grocery run.
She said you forgot.
I stared at it for a long moment. Then I typed back, check with the landlord first. I hit send. And for the first time in a long while, I felt the balance shift. The printer made a steady hum that morning. I'd been staring at the eviction draft on my laptop for 3 days, letting the words settle like dust, daring myself to touch them. But today, I moved the cursor, hit print, and listened as the paper fed out, one slow, deliberate sheet at a time. No guilt, no hesitation. Just resolve. The document slid into my hand, still warm. The black ink sharp and final. I read the first line, 30-day notice to vacate, and felt something loosen inside me. A knot that had been holding for years, finally untying itself. I whispered under my breath, I paid for their wine, their lights, their legacy. Now I'm paying for their exit. The house was quiet, but it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt awake. I slipped the paper into a folder marked legal, placed it neatly in my desk drawer, and locked it. Then I poured coffee, stepped outside to the porch, and watched the sun rise over the neighbor's oak tree. The sky was a strange mix of pink and blue, the same colors that had lit my backyard the night of Callista's party. Funny how light can feel so different depending on who's standing beneath it. Around mid-morning, I walked to the corner store to pick up milk. Outside, a group of neighbors were setting up for the local garden fair. I heard them before I saw them. Those light, chatty tones people use when gossip is harmless until it's not. Isn't this the old Simmons house? A woman asked, pointing in my direction. You know, her parents' place? Callista's voice answered before I could step out of sight. Yes, she said, bright and confident. Inherited from the family. Always been ours. I froze halfway down the sidewalk, the carton of milk sweating in my hand. Inherited. Ours. I didn't interrupt. I didn't correct. I just smiled to myself, walked home, and unlocked my office. The first thing I did was open the top drawer and pull out the deed to the house. My name, printed in bold. Owner of record. Autumn last name. I held it up to the light like a mirror, making sure it still reflected me. Then I printed another copy. That evening, I framed it. A quiet little exhibit of truth hung above my desk. No audience needed. I spent the next few hours building my armor, digital and paper. Every utility bill, every tax record, every mortgage statement. I scanned them all, uploaded them into 3 separate drives, labeled by date and category. I emailed copies to myself. Then I sent one final file to Mireia, the only person I trusted outside these walls. Subject: in case I disappear. She wrote back within minutes, about time. That made me smile. The kind that reaches the eyes, small but real. The day passed in small rituals. I cleaned the kitchen, watered the plants, fixed a loose hinge on the back door. Every action carried weight, like I was reclaiming ownership one screw at a time. By late afternoon, the house was golden with sunset. I sat back at my desk and opened the calendar on my computer. Monday, 10 a.m., serve notice. I typed it in, hit save, and let the reminder blink in quiet confirmation. Then I drafted a cover letter. To all residents of 212 Sycamore Lane, please be advised that this property will revert solely to the name of its legal owner. This notice is not personal. It is procedural. It is necessary. At the bottom, I added a final line for myself. This is mine. I leaned back in the chair. My fingers tingled. This wasn't anger anymore. It was precision. As twilight came, I closed the blinds, washed the coffee mug I'd used all day, and made myself dinner. Simple, grilled chicken, a few vegetables. I ate at the counter, the same place I'd once stood washing wine glasses for people who never thanked me. The memory didn't hurt anymore. It just reminded me how small my silence had made me. The door opened around 7. I didn't have to look to know who it was. The scent of her perfume hit first, sharp, expensive, invasive. Hey, Callista called from the hallway. Don't forget, Junie's birthday brunch is here next month. I need the patio cleared. Her voice carried that same tone, expecting compliance. I didn't look up from my laptop. You may want to check your calendar, Callista. You're on a tighter deadline than you think. A pause. The air shifted. Excuse me? I turned then, met her eyes with the kind of calm that frightens people who thrive on chaos. 30 days. Her lips parted, the start of a question or maybe a protest, but nothing came out. I didn't explain. I didn't need to. I'd spent half a lifetime explaining myself to people who'd already decided I was less. She lingered for a few seconds longer, waiting for me to backtrack, to soften. When I didn't, she huffed quietly and left. The sound of the door closing echoed through the house, final and clean. I exhaled slowly and looked back at the clock. It was just after 8. The light outside had faded completely, leaving only the hum of the refrigerator and the steady pulse of my heart. For years, I'd convinced myself confrontation meant conflict, and conflict meant losing control. But this was control. I walked back to my office, where the framed deed hung on the wall. For a moment, I stood there, reading my name again, like a prayer. 30 days. That was all I'd said. But the silence that followed, it was louder than anything I'd ever spoken. 2 mornings passed quietly after I said the words 30 days. They moved around the house as if nothing had changed, pretending the air wasn't charged with something new. But beneath every forced conversation, every polite smile, there was fear. They just didn't know what shape it would take yet. At 10 sharp, a courier knocked at the door. A man in a navy shirt handed me a folder, asked for 3 signatures, and left before I could even thank him. I placed 1 copy on the kitchen corkboard, another slid under my parents' door, and the 3rd went into Callista's hand when she walked into the living room. "What's this?" she asked, shaking the envelope like it was a bill she didn't remember creating. I kept my tone steady. A formality. When I left for errands that day, the sun was bright, Charleston's humidity pressing on my shoulders. By the time I returned in the afternoon, the storm had hit, just not the kind that came from the sky. Vera was crying at the table, the eviction notice spread open in front of her. Callista paced the kitchen, her phone in her hand, her voice rising and falling like she was rehearsing an argument for an audience that hadn't arrived. Thurman leaned against the counter, arms crossed, quiet but seething. "You're blowing this way out of proportion," he said as soon as I entered. "We're family." I set my keys down slowly. "The only thing that's been blown out of proportion is your entitlement." That shut him up. Vera sniffed, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "Honey, you can't possibly mean to follow through with this. Where will we go? What will people think?" I walked past them, grabbed a glass of water, and said, "I'm not managing other people's lives anymore. Or their reputations." Callista stopped pacing. "You've lost your mind." "No," I said, walking down the hall. "I just found it." I locked my bedroom door behind me, set the glass down, and exhaled. The yelling continued in muffled bursts through the walls. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. A few hours later, my phone buzzed on the desk. A text from Mireia lit the screen. "You'll want to hear this." Attached was an audio file. I hesitated a moment before pressing play. It was Callista's voice, loud, bright, perfectly confident. "She's basically my charity case," she said, laughter in her tone. "Always has been. Poor thing wouldn't last a week without me." The crowd around her laughed along. I didn't recognize the voices. Probably her colleagues. The ones she liked to impress with her little stories. The recording ended. I sat there, staring at the wall, listening to the echo of her words replay in my head. Then I opened my laptop, attached the file to an email, and typed the subject line, "Supporting evidence, ongoing misrepresentation." The recipient, my lawyer. When I hit send, I felt no satisfaction. Just clarity. An hour later, while cleaning up my desk, I noticed a notification on my phone. Credit alert. Application declined. Possible fraud detected. I frowned, logged into my bank account, and opened my credit report. There it was. A new credit line I hadn't opened. Callista's name listed as an authorized user. My stomach turned cold. For a moment, I thought about walking into her room and confronting her. Then I stopped myself. That's what she expected. Drama she could twist. Instead, I picked up the phone and called the bank. "Hi," I said, my voice even. "I'd like to report identity misuse." The representative hesitated. "May I ask who the other party is?" "Yes," I said. "It's within the family." He went silent for a beat, then said softly, "Understood." We spent 40 minutes closing accounts, changing passwords, freezing my credit. When we hung up, I leaned back in the chair, stared at the ceiling, and whispered to no one, "No more second chances." I reopened the truth folder on my desktop. Inside it, I created a new subfolder titled "If They Try to Sue." I moved everything into it, recordings, receipts, the deed, and now, the fraud documentation. Each file was a small piece of the truth they'd been trying to erase. They told everyone I was dramatic. Fine. I'd let the evidence speak instead. By dusk, the house was silent again. I walked into the living room and found the eviction notice still pinned to the corkboard. Someone had underlined the word vacate in red pen. I smiled faintly. A child's tantrum in adult handwriting. My phone buzzed again. This time, Vera's name flashing across the screen. I ignored it at first, but the ringing persisted. Finally, I answered. "Mom." Her voice was small, almost trembling. "You don't have to go this far, honey. She's your sister." I closed my eyes, took a breath. "You've always had a daughter, Mom. You just never picked me." There was a pause, the sound of her breath catching. "You're going to break this family." I let the silence stretch until it hurt. Then I said, "It was broken the first time you told me to be quiet." I ended the call. Outside, the cicadas had started singing, their rhythm steady and endless. I sat on the edge of the couch, listening, feeling something inside me settle. For years, they mistook my calm for weakness. They'd see now, calm could be the sharpest weapon of all. By Saturday morning, 30 days had passed. The house woke slowly, but I was already sitting on the porch, coffee in hand. The mug felt warm, steady. Across the street, the sun broke through the Spanish moss like it always did, streaking gold across the driveway just as the first moving truck pulled in. It was strange, how quiet the neighborhood felt for something so loud. Callista burst through the front door in a flurry of movement. She was barefoot, in pajama pants and a silk blouse, clearly caught off guard. One of the movers asked her where to start. She blinked, then pointed toward the living room. Vera came next, trying to play it calm, dressed in pearls and slacks like this was some well-planned family downsize. "We've been meaning to declutter anyway," she said to no one in particular, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. Thurman didn't say a word, just stood by the porch steps with his arms folded, avoiding my eyes. He looked like he was waiting for the ground to open and swallow him whole. I watched them from my chair, sipping slowly. Funny how quiet people get when they realize your silence was never weakness. It was grace. Around 10, Mrs. Delaney from 2 houses down wandered toward her fence. She wore her gardening gloves and a wide-brimmed hat, but it was the raised eyebrow that said more than anything. "Thought this house was inherited," she called, peering toward the truck. "Didn't they say that at the neighborhood dinner?" "Said it's always been in the family." I turned to her, calm. "People say all kinds of things when they're too proud to say thank you." She nodded, and I could tell she understood. Inside, the movers worked methodically. Designer furniture, framed degrees, boxes of wine Callista never paid for. One by one, it all came out. Junie stood by the front door, backpack on, hugging her stuffed bunny. "Where are we going?" she asked. No one answered. I almost did. But I knew better. That kind of truth doesn't come from strangers. It comes later in pieces and always too slow. Vera approached me around noon. She looked tired. Not from packing, but from watching her performance fall apart. "You're really going to do this?" she asked. "Kick your family out?" I stood, adjusted my sweater, and met her eyes evenly. "No," I said. "I'm letting my family find their way, without stepping on mine." For a moment, her lips trembled. But she didn't speak again. A neighbor across the street raised her phone, snapped a picture of the moving truck. Callista caught sight of it, and for the first time in years, Her face fell, not from exhaustion, but from exposure. It's one thing to lie. It's another to be seen. Back inside, I went in my office to breathe. The air was still. On my desk, next to the framed deed and my coffee ring, my laptop pinged with a new email. Subject: glad to see you're standing tall. From Professor Klein. I opened it, and my heart slowed as I read. Autumn. I saw a clip from Callista's last talk on LinkedIn. It reminded me of a piece I read once, yours. I still remember when you wrote that speech for her award years ago. It was one of the most honest pieces I'd ever read. She delivered it well, but the soul in those words was all yours. I hope you're still writing. The world needs your voice. I read it again, then forwarded it to my lawyer. Subject: in case she claims authorship again. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady. By 4, the house was half empty. The silence felt different now, earned. I walked into the kitchen, peeled the old family schedule from the corkboard, and replaced it with a new paper. Transfer of power, effective immediately. Not a legal document, not a threat, just a line drawn in ink, a statement for myself. As I pinned it, Junie walked in. She looked around the bare room and asked, "Will you still be here when we come back?" I kneeled beside her, smoothed her hair. "If you ever want to see me," I said, "you know where I'll be. But I won't be where they pretend I don't exist." She hugged me tight, then let go. When the last box was loaded and the truck doors closed, no one looked back. Not Callista, not Vera, not Thurman. And I didn't wave. The porch was mine again. So was the house. So was the silence. The first morning after they were gone, the house didn't creak. It breathed. No footsteps above me. No cabinet doors slamming. No morning arguments muffled through the thin drywall. Just stillness. Unapologetic. Undisturbed. I stepped out of bed without hesitation, not bracing myself for the noise that usually greeted me. No one calling out for misplaced keys, or demanding coffee, or asking me to just double-check that Junie had packed her permission slip. There was no performance required of me now. I walked barefoot across the coldwood floor to the kitchen and made my coffee slowly, not because I was tired, but because I could. No one was waiting. No one needed anything. I could take my time with the sugar, the stir, the first sip. I stood at the back door, letting the warmth of the mug seep into my fingers as I watched the light stretch across the yard like a quiet apology. It touched everything they used to ignore: the oak tree with a split trunk, the rusted wind chimes that never got rehung after the storm, the faded garden gnome with half a nose. They had left behind their noise. What I kept was the quiet. It took a few days to unlearn the habit of listening for them. For years, I had moved like a ghost inside my own home. Helpful but unseen, needed but not considered. My contributions were like background music, essential for atmosphere but never the thing people actually noticed. But now, every sound in the house belonged to me. The creak of the hallway floorboards. The gentle gurgle of the old radiator. Even the refrigerator's occasional sigh. Mine. I wandered through the house like a visitor in a newly opened museum, one I had once owned but never truly explored. Every room looked wider. Every wall, softer. Even the light filtering through the windows felt more intentional, like it was showing up just for me. In the hallway, I passed Junie's crayon drawings, still taped to the fridge. Rainbows. Stars. A lopsided cat with 2 different colored eyes. I paused. Thought about taking them down. Then didn't. Some memories deserve space, even if they came from complicated places. Later, in the bathroom, I found a pair of Vera's pearl stud earrings still sitting on the counter, carefully placed, deliberately forgotten. Classic. Expensive. Impossibly neat. She'd probably left them on purpose, assuming I'd bring them back. Fold them into a silk pouch. Call her. Apologize. I didn't. I held them for a moment, then opened the bottom drawer of my vanity and placed them inside a small tin labeled unsentimental, a container filled with odd buttons, broken clasps, and things that once carried obligation instead of affection. Not out of bitterness, but because I was no longer carrying the weight of returning what was never mine to keep. That afternoon, the phone rang. I watched it from across the room, waited for it to stop, then checked the voicemail icon blinking like a low-grade emergency. It was Callista. Her voice was tight, clipped, trying hard to sound breezy while barely holding it together. "We're staying with a friend. Don't worry about Junie. She's okay. I don't get why you had to make it public. We could have handled this privately, like adults. Anyway, just letting you know we're fine." I didn't call back. Instead, I opened a new message. Typed slowly. "Everything you said was public. I just stopped covering it. No punctuation. No apology. No explanation. Just truth." That evening, I heated a microwave meal and set it on the long dining table, the one they used to fill with noise, critiques, and ceremonial chaos. I lit a single candle, not because I was mourning, but because I deserved light. I ate slowly, not out of habit, not out of exhaustion, but because the meal belonged to me. No one interrupted to ask for extra wine. No one rolled their eyes at my portions. No one called me dramatic. And for the first time in years, I enjoyed every bite. Later that week, while watering the front garden, a routine that had once belonged to everyone and now belonged only to me, I found a letter in the mailbox. The envelope was covered in purple marker. Stickers lined the edges, glittering stars, lopsided hearts, a smiley face with uneven eyes. I smiled before even opening it. Inside was a folded piece of lined notebook paper, torn from a child's spiral journal. "Dear Auntie Autumn, sorry we left. Mommy is sad. I hope you're not mad. I drew you in this picture now. You're in the middle. Love, Junie." The drawing was clumsy, sweet, and perfect. 5 stick figures: Junie, Vera, Thurman, Callista, and me. I was in the middle. Not faded. Not scribbled over. Present. No longer erased. I held the paper for a long time, fingers brushing over the crayon strokes. Then I walked into the house and opened the drawer where I kept my truth folder, the one filled with receipts, legal printouts, therapist notes, and carefully drawn boundary lines. I looked at the folder, then closed it. Instead, I opened a new folder I had labeled the night before. Family. Mine. And I placed Junie's letter there. Because sometimes the most radical thing you can do isn't burn down what hurt you. It's choosing what deserves to stay. That night, I didn't listen for footsteps. I didn't brace for voices down the hall. I didn't check my phone. I curled up on the couch with a soft blanket and a novel I'd been trying to finish for months. The quiet wrapped itself around me like a second skin. Not heavy, not hollow, just mine. The house didn't ache. It settled. And I settled with it. Not thinking about who I'd lost, but about the space I'd finally made for peace to arrive. I hadn't been erased. I had simply needed enough stillness to redraw myself. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do isn't to scream or fight or explain. It's to walk away and let silence do the talking. Autumn's story reminds us, setting boundaries doesn't make you cruel. Choosing peace doesn't mean you failed them. It means you finally saw them for who they truly were and chose yourself instead. Have you ever had to choose peace over people, even when they were family? Share your story in the comments.